Hey, 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 how's everybody doing? Welcome to episode 11, Blooming Into You. I'm Kristen, your host. Joining me today is my friend and fellow trauma coach, narcissistic abuse coach, Susie Miller Wendel. And she's here to chit chat about narcissistic abuse and co-parenting or parallel parenting. And we'll just jump right into all that. But hi, Susie, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? So good to
I'm
see
good,
you.
thank you. You too. It's really nice to see you. We did a narcissistic abuse certification together. So we're
Yes,
now
we did.
the professionals in that arena, the experts, right?
Yes, exactly. We are.
And yeah, and so good to see you. It's really nice to see you again. And
It's good to see you too. Thank you for
I'm
having
gonna,
me.
oh, you're welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today. I'm
Yes.
gonna give you guys a little introduction to Susie, and then we're gonna jump in and chit chat with her today about narcissistic abuse and co-parenting. And here we go. Um, so Susie is an author and trauma recovery coach specializing in narcissistic abuse, and she's currently pursuing a master's in social work. Yeah.
Woo!
She works with people who have been affected by narcissistic abuse, both in relationships and at the hands of a parent. Susie is a public speaker and content creator on her YouTube channel, which is at Susie Miller Wendel, where she creates videos about narcissistic abuse, single parent life, and trauma recovery. In her free time, Susie loves spending time with her two teenagers, playing tennis, cool, hiking, traveling, and trying new recipes. Wow, that's awesome. Do you have a lot of that free time to do all that, or are you pretty busy?
I'm staying pretty busy these days, but though I guess one benefit of being divorced is you do have some free time that maybe you wouldn't otherwise have. So I try to take advantage of that time and do some traveling every once in a while and try new hobbies or reignite myself in an old hobby that I used to love, which was tennis for me. I started playing that again after like a 20-year hiatus. So that's
Hmm.
I guess the beautiful part of divorce. You can kind of start rediscovering yourself again and, go back to some of those things that maybe lit your fire before and get back into them again. So I love doing that stuff on my free time.
That's so true. I mean, after a narcissistic abuse, while you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you don't really have a lot of free time, right? You're always kind of catering to what they need, and you're kind of losing your interest in yourself in many ways. So
For
I'm really
sure.
glad that. I mean, divorce is obviously not something that I champion, but if you're with somebody
Right.
who's abusive and it ends up that way, it's a good thing to start rediscovering yourself. So I'm really glad you're doing that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
amazing. All right, so we have a lot to
Yeah,
talk about today, girl.
we
Um,
do.
so we want to talk mainly about the common roles assigned to children with narcissistic family systems and how to support your children. And
Mhm.
before we start that, I want to say that you wrote this amazing book, which I'm going to mention probably many times in this conversation, or at least a couple. Nurturing After Narcissism, Raising Thriving and Resilient Children After Divorcing a Narcissist. And it is a great book, and I really love it a lot. And so I can't
Thank
wait to
you.
maybe talk more about that. But if not, everyone can go find that book on Amazon, and I'll give you a link to
Yes.
other places, right? So yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, let's first start with what inspired you to write this book, and then we'll jump into more questions having to do with parenting, co-parenting.
Yeah, it was a combination really of my lived experiences and then also when I started my coaching business, I had several individuals approach me who had been raised by a narcissistic parent. So I immediately wanted to start learning more about that. And as I started learning more about that, I think I picked up on some things that I hadn't really been aware of in my own personal situation with my children. So it prompted me to write the book because I feel like there's a lot of resources out there for parents who are trying to co-parent with somebody who's narcissistic. There's a wealth of education around parallel parenting and using parenting apps, going gray rock, only responding things relating to the kids. There's a lot of content around that, kind of how to protect the parent, but I don't feel like there's as much education for parents to understand what narcissistic parenting looks like and how their kids might be affected by that. So the book that I wrote, it does include some of those tips and strategies on how to protect your own peace when you're co-parenting with someone who's narcissistic, but there's also a part of the book that's around what we're talking about today, which is what is that narcissistic parenting style like? What is the place that they parent from? And what are some tactics that they use within their family system to kind of maintain control within that family dynamic? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And again, a part of the book is around education with that and how to counteract that parenting style while the kids are in your care.
Mm.
So that's
Right.
what kind of motivated me to write the book.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really amazing topic that you chose. And it's really important. Yeah. Because parents don't always know how to do this. It's just a whole different
Right,
world once you're out of the relationship. You're trying to heal and then you're trying to parent in a healthy way,
right,
sort of at the, paralleling again that other parent, not necessarily but we'll talk more about this.
right. Yeah. And I think
Okay. Yeah.
people in that situation feel so powerless. And I think
Hmm.
the book helps you realize there are things that you can control, and the focus really needs to be on what you can control and what you can do while the kids are with you, opposed to worrying and trying to control what happens in the other household, because we all know we can't control that. There's certain things that we can get written into agreements and things like that, but at the end of the day, what we can control is when the kids are with us, and that's where we need to focus the majority of our time and effort. So,
Yeah. Right. Like I once read something about how, you just need to impart your own values while they're with you, and like
right.
let them know what you think is good and wholesome or healthy, and
Yeah.
and then just they have
Emphasize
rules at
those
your house. But
things.
yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So what do you
Yeah.
think drives narcissistic parents to create roles within the family system?
It's really no different than what drives them in romantic relationships. It's that at the core of who they are, they have these strong feelings of insecurity, worthlessness, and rather than trying to deal with those uncomfortable emotions, they do whatever it takes to try to create this superior, kind of entitled exterior so that they can shield themselves from what it is that they believe they lack. So that's where they parent from. They parent from this place of high insecurity. Um, and they view their family as a status symbol. And the members of the family that help keep the status of the family elevated are the ones who are going to be the most valued. Those that don't contribute to the family image are the ones that typically end up being punished or made the scapegoat. So it's all, again, just kind of from that place of deep insecurity, and that also that drive to have control, to have power, control in their relationships, and to have that constant supply of attention and admiration. Again, it goes beyond romantic relationships, and it extends to their children. So that's why they create these clear designated roles to maintain that power and control, and again, have that outward appearance of being the star parent, the parent of the year. So that's kind of what's
Hmm.
at the core of all of that.
So it's like the children are sort of like extensions of the parents. So if they act like in a favorable way of making the parent look good, they get more like, recognition
Right.
and praise. But if they act like they're not doing things the right way and making the parent look bad, they'll get
Mm-hmm.
kind of punished from the parent or ignored or
For
whatever,
sure.
abused. And
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Hmm.
Yeah. And what you described are right there are two of the most common roles that exist. So maybe that's a good segue into that. We
Yeah,
can talk
please
about
do.
what
Tell
those
us.
are.
Yeah, please do.
Um, yeah, so the first big role that narcissists will place their children in is the scapegoat child. So, like you said, the narcissistic parent needs someone to blame the problems within the family on, and someone who kind of they can deflect their own shortcomings onto. So the scapegoated child is that child. And oftentimes this child is the one who is actually very intuitive, and they see the narcissist for who they are, so they pose a threat to the narcissist. So they're the
Mm.
child that's most likely to speak out if they become the target of the narcissist anger and rage, or they're just calling them out on their bad behavior, the narcissist will use that as proof that the child is bad or the rebel. Um, and so that's kind of how that child gets singled out within the family of being kind of the bad kid. Um, so that's one of the bigger roles that oftentimes is played out within the narcissistic family system. But it's obviously a very difficult role for any child to be in because they're often the one that's told they can't do anything right. They're the source or they're the target of a lot of, shame and blame and guilt. And this can lead to long-term consequences for that child. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's
That's the hard one. Yeah, they have a
yeah.
lot of like narratives, false narratives and limiting beliefs about themselves based on all that shame they're being lumped that's being lumped onto
Right.
them, huh? And that's
Right.
obviously a trauma, um, a trauma, it's a traumatic event in itself being treated that
Mm-hmm.
way. So, but I mean, I
Right.
think the other ones you're going to talk about also have their own trauma,
Mm-hmm.
trauma attached, right? So what else do we have
Right.
here?
So the other one, like you kind of implied earlier, is the golden child. And we've all heard of the golden child. That's the one that's given special treatment from the narcissist. The narcissist views the golden child as an example of their perfect parenting. So they're like a trophy that they can hold up and say, look, I'm doing an amazing job. My child is a high achiever. They're amazing at sports. Typically, this child is like a very attractive child. They are literally, like that golden example of perfect parenting. So when that child's placed on the pedestal, obviously the other siblings become jealous. They may become resentful, and the golden child may even adopt the belief that they're better than the other siblings. Um, and that can, also play out into becoming narcissistic themselves long term and as adults. But at a minimum, that golden child is going to struggle long term with being confronted with any type of criticism or failure because they associate success and achievement with being safe. They see the scapegoated child being dealt harsh punishments and being criticized. So they learn that it's safe for me if I can just be perfect and if I can do my best. So they may struggle with that toxic perfectionism long term, or again, they may adopt the belief that they are better than others and become narcissistic themselves. So another,
Right.
yeah,
Makes sense.
role
Hmm.
that can have some long-term consequences.
It's interesting because
So,
maybe, yeah, they'd be a little bit more like entitled and switch over to almost like that. Dr. Ramani mentions like the communal narcissist, and something watched today. I know we learned about all different kinds of narcissists in our course, but the one they kind of come across as like they're holier than thou, self-righteous, or like if you would have done it my way, you wouldn't be like so, messed up right now, or you wouldn't be suffering right now. And I
right,
don't know, that seems like, golden child could go one of two ways, right? Like, become like more narcissistic or just have those long term, like, I need to be a perfectionist. But I think it's
right.
interesting how, you can become narcissist if you're raised by one. So it's really
Yeah,
scary.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, please
So
continue. Hey, I didn't mean to
those are
interrupt you.
two. Yeah, no, those are two of the bigger roles. Another one is the lost child. So this child it's kind of similar to the scapegoat. However, they're not subject to the harsh criticism as much as they are just almost neglected. They're kind of made to feel invisible within the family system by being encouraged to not rock the boat. So oftentimes this child is not receiving the praise or acknowledgement when it's due. They may just kind of self-isolate, spend a lot of time in their rooms, um, things like that. So they're just overall not getting a lot of validation and encouragement, and they're just kind of left, left to fend for themselves a bit. So you can imagine long term, again, that since they're not receiving that validation, they struggle to self validate long term. They may become, depressed long term as adults, and just kind of overall struggle to understand where they fit within the world, as
Mhm.
as being in that lost child role.
It seems really lonely for that child.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely another one that has long-term impacts. All of these do.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the lost child. And then typically within the narcissistic family system, there is an enabler. And this role is typically played by either the spouse or partner of the narcissist, or it's not uncommon that it's played by the daughter. So
Mm-hmm.
this person is typically closest to the narcissist. They're the ones making sure that their needs are taken care of, oftentimes at the sacrifice of their own needs, just an attempt to keep peace within the household. They'll oftentimes shield the narcissist from criticism by excusing their actions. They don't challenge their behaviors. Again, they see, if I can keep this person calm and happy, it's worth it. I'll sacrifice myself because I don't want all this chaos within our family.
Hmm.
The enabler is typically codependent if it is a spouse or partner. And they may have grown up in an abusive household themselves. So that feeling within the family system is familiar, and they've seen an example of somebody kind of trying to protect the peace of the family and be the enabler. So that's who they become. But this
Hmm.
overall just kind of contributes to that narcissist feeling of grandiosity and control within the family system because they have that person kind of supporting them, making sure that they're comfortable and happy within the family system. So
Yeah.
that's the enabler.
Now, I want to just mention something about that if I can real quick.
Sure. Yeah.
Like that's one of the hard things when you are, separated or divorced from the narcissist is to you have a different role then. Like let's say you were the spouse and you were the enabler and you still want to if you're in a co-parenting situation, which is hard, you probably shouldn't do with a narcissist, right? But when you are doing that, you sometimes want to still kind of maintain that. It depends on the level of like abuse when you broke up or whatever. But if you just
Right.
had I just left and I'm still trying to co-parent and like, get along with
Right.
the parent who's narcissistic, it might be like you kind of put this united front and it still shows the kids, oh,
Mm-hmm.
even though they're not together anymore, they still are on the same page.
Right.
And that's not good. I mean, people want to be, consciously parenting and, getting along and being friends with their ex. So the kids feel like, okay, but it's probably
Mhm.
sending the wrong message. It's still
Right.
enabling the narcissistic parent. Is that right? Would you say?
Yeah, I would say if you are not, even if you're trying to have a peaceful co-parenting situation, when you're trying to co-parent with someone who's narcissistic, you still have to stand up for your kids when you need to stand up for them. You can't let
Yeah.
things slip under the rug. If you see that your ex is mistreating or emotionally abusing your child, obviously you have to stand up for your child, or they are going to think, well, my mom or my dad doesn't care about me. They both think I'm bad. So you do have to still speak up for your child, and you still have to validate your child's emotions. So that's another huge part of it. If your child has been hurt by something the other parent has said or done, it's important for you to have conversations around them. That doesn't mean that you're throwing that person, your co-parent, under the bus. It means you are seeing their emotions and not dismissing them, and making them feel like their experience was valid, and not just sweeping it under the rug. So it's important. Those two things are very important. Or like you said, you will come across as being united with somebody who's got a toxic parenting style, and we don't want to do that. So
Right. I just want to say that I think that when you're dealing with a covert or malignant narcissist, and you don't really know what they're capable of, let's say. Like they're not necessarily overt and like, calling you verbally or physically abusing you. They're really, sneaky, underhanded, kind of like
hmm
do things on the sly to hurt you, use your children as pawns to hurt you,
right.
the enabling parent. And I think for many, and I'm just bringing this up because I think for many, it becomes a little bit like a waste of time
Hmm.
to, it doesn't, it's not, you want to defend your children, but if you say something to the parent,
Hmm.
it gives the parent the like almost the permission to do it more or to hurt the child, more, or
True.
really
Right.
hurt the child, but also you're trying to hurt the other
Hmm.
parent, right? Because you're trying to make that parent give the narcissist wants to supply, right? So, if they poke you and you freak out, it's like, oh, thank you very much. I don't
Right.
really care if I hurt my children as long as you are
Mm,
there freaking out, being in
absolutely.
fight or flight to give me my attention and my energy. That's all I
Right.
care about. So I think that like, I think the validating the children's feelings and like, calling out like what has
Hmm.
happened with that other parent is important for the children. But I also wonder if like, if it's not kind of dangerous sometimes,
Yeah.
depending on the situation, to actually say to that parent, I don't like it when you do this to the children or to the child. It's not
Hmm.
okay because it's hurting the child. I don't know. I just don't know
Yeah.
if that's,
There
and I'm
there's
not disagreeing with what you're saying, but do you know what I mean? Like there are certain
yeah.
circumstances.
Absolutely. There's a fine line. And I think we as parents, deep down when you need to get involved and when you can just handle the situation within your own home. I'm thinking of a couple personal examples I've had where I have had to go over to the other parent's house because things have gotten so out of hand where it's like, okay, I
Hmm.
need to actually go over there and take you to my own home. And so
Hmm.
that's the type of situation I'm referring to that if things get to that level, you've got to step in, at some point. But the vast majority of it, if it is just something you can resolve when the kids are in your care, then that's the best strategy if you can do that.
Okay, good.
Bec-
All right.
yeah, because we're not going to be able to change the way they parent at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, I
So,
agree. Okay. Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Sorry,
So,
please continue.
no, no, I know I appreciate you saying that because there's so many different examples out there. It's hard to have just like a one size fits all approach for
Oh,
these
yeah.
situations. So
Hmm.
that is very good what you said. Absolutely. So um, and then there's two kind of lesser known roles. There's one that's the surrogate parent role that can come into play, and that really develops when within a narcissistic family system when there's two parents under one roof both parents are preoccupied. The narcissistic parent is preoccupied with maintaining that power control within the family dynamic. And then the enabler or the other partner is making sure that narcissist needs are being taken care of. So, in that situation, when there's multiple children, it's not uncommon for one child to be placed into kind of a surrogate parent role where they are, being asked to do things for their siblings. They're held accountable sometimes for the other siblings' behavior, and they're overall just kind of forced to grow up too quickly and again sacrifice their own needs to benefit the family. So there's a surrogate parent, and then one other kind of lesser known role is the mascot. And that's kind of what it sounds like. It's typically the youngest child of the family. They're the ones that provide comedic relief. They kind of play the joker of the family, and they kind of just mask the dysfunction of the family overall. So you can imagine that child is the one that kind of uses humor to hide behind their own feelings, their own um, distress or sadness within that family system by being the joker of the family. So that's the kind of the last role that I talk about. But
Mm.
um,
Interesting. Yeah, that's
yeah,
very interesting, that family system. Yeah, I think
definitely.
that's, yeah, I think we can, I don't know, whoever's listening might be able to like place people into those
Right.
labels in their own families. So
Yeah,
it's tough.
it's very textbook. I think a lot of people will say when it comes to narcissists and relationships that they all play from the same playbook in how they behave and how they act in relationships. The tactics are
Hmm.
very common. And as
Hmm.
I've learned more along the way, I found that their tactics when it comes to just their parenting and these roles within family systems are also very common and very consistent across, different family systems. So
Yeah,
it's,
it's true. That's interesting. It is
yeah,
textbook. It's like you can almost like check off the boxes about the behaviors. Not to say that
right.
we would label or diagnose anyone with narcissistic personality disorder, but there are, things you can check
Mm-hmm.
off to see if maybe a person leans more toward that. And then, of course, if that's the situation, you can pretty much guarantee that there's going to be very similar behaviors across the board. And then the way they parent is going to be very similar. So it's actually
Right.
kind of good. I don't like to label people with things, right? But if you have a label, sometimes it helps you to sort of disengage and detach from the emotionality of something and say, well, here's the deal, here's what's going
Mm-hmm.
on, and I can't really ignore that. And so what am I going to do about that? Because this
Right.
person's got these characteristics and they're doing nothing to heal, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
doing no work on themselves. I'm just creating more pain and disharmony and lack of peace and pain for myself and my family if I'm
Right.
not noticing this and realizing these common traits are happening, regardless if they're narcissistic, right? It's like if you're being treated badly by the person that you love and they're treating your children badly, do something. I
Right.
mean, easier said than done, but you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, but you'll know you can do something if you choose.
Yeah, it helps you become more proactive and less reactive. If you can educate yourself about these things and start picking up on the signs, and you can start thinking through scenarios. Maybe one situation didn't go how you would have liked, or you don't feel like you handled it the way you should have. Once you become educated, you can start thinking through, okay, if this happens again, here's what I'll do. Here are the conversations I need to circle back on and have with my kids. So it just, I feel like it makes you feel more empowered when you know what's happening and you can
Mhm.
start acting on it.
Yeah. And
So,
like, something that, talk about a lot is that when we're in an emotionally charged situation, either in a parenting situation or just with that narcissistic person or just in life and when things are emotional, the logical part of our brain goes offline. So
mhm,
we might know logically, oh, it would be a good idea to do this and this. But if you're in, all of your like parts of you and all the, emotions are up and you're activated and you maybe had past traumas that are being triggered or, the moment you're being triggered by this person, it can be difficult to think logically. So it is
yes,
good to have the checklists or the things you should do so that when you are calmer, you can look and go, okay, now it's back in my logical mind and my emotional, they're connected again. Now I can do these other things.
hmm,
Pay attention and like do the things and get a safety plan or
right,
whatever you need to do. Like if you're still trying to leave the situation or so I just think
yes,
that like it's not so easy. Like I said, like just leave. It's obviously
yeah,
not that. It's you've got to have a plan, but when you're emotional and you're being triggered a lot, it can be hard to leave the situation or know what to do, especially if your children are being hurt by that parent. So
for
I just want
sure,
to emphasize that, it's not like a throwaway thing where I'm saying, well, just leave. Obviously, there's a
right,
lot that goes
right,
into this, and it's delicate, and it can be dangerous, and it's very scary. But I think that you're right. Like the more empowered you are by knowing things, you can be more proactive and less reactive, and I think that's very key. So thank you for saying that. I think it's really important to
sure,
pay
yeah.
attention to. So
Education is
so
key.
it is. It really is. It helps a lot. So you have 9 ways narcissistic parents sabotage their kids. Would you mind sharing those with us? I'd love to hear what those are.
Sure, sure. So they're just kind of specific examples of how the narcissistic parents' parenting style plays out in real life. So some of these we've kind of touched on as we went through the family roles, but you can see again how they play out in real life. So the first one is just that they teach kids that emotional responses and feelings are bad. And this is particularly true of the scapegoat child. The
Mm,
narcissist will label their emotional reactions or them calling them out on their behavior as that child being uncooperative or weak or inappropriate or too much, whatever label that they want to put on the child. And again, they use these responses that the child has as proof, air quotes, of why they're the outcast or the black sheep of the family
mm,
and why they are deserving of poor treatment. And again, the other children see this within the family system and they start associating emotions with being bad as well, or speaking up as being bad. And again, the one that's the perfect child, the golden child, is going to want to stay safe in that golden child bubble all they can. So that's number one.
mhm.
Number two, they create an environment where rage and shame are a normal way of life. We all know that, it's very common for narcissists to use explosive anger or rage when they feel like circumstances are slipping out of their control. And family members then want to do anything and everything to keep that narcissist from having those outbursts. So they learn that compliance leads to the best treatment. They, you know, they'll do again anything to try to keep that narcissist from lashing out. We also know on the other side of the rage, narcissists can behave in a very passive aggressive, covert way, such as giving the silent treatment or withholding something, important. So that's another thing, a kind of a thing that's normalized, I think, within the narcissistic family system is just completely going silent, giving that silent treatment to family members and not talking through things through and handling them in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the second one. Um,
Okay.
yeah. Any questions on those? I feel like I'm just talking and talking.
No, no, I'm just
Okay.
listening and I'm thinking about how, like, see how convoluted it can be because you've got like the raging and then you've got the shame that comes in for the child and says, don't, play small, don't make a scene, don't make waves. And golden child is more perfectionistic, lost child's lost, probably. And,
Right. Just,
like,
yeah.
and then whatever we have to do to maintain the walk on eggshells to keep that parent happy is what we do.
Right.
Right. And yeah.
For sure.
Hmm.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so the third one is that they prevent them from developing healthy relationships and bonds. So narcissists will use tactics such as triangulation, which they
Mm.
do in relationships as well, but they'll use these within the narcissistic family system where they triangulate family members. Oftentimes it's children. Again, if you've got the golden child and the scapegoat who are being treated completely differently, they're oftentimes pitted against each other and they're made to almost compete with each other for love and attention. That prevents those children from becoming close, when they are treated differently and they're not going to form that natural bond. That can be the same thing can play out between the other parent and children where that triangulation occurs. But overall, that just prevents other family members from developing the strong bonds that they would otherwise in a healthy household.
Yeah, I
Um,
want to say, I want to ask you something about that too.
yeah.
So I was thinking about like how this, impacts the attachment the child has because
Mm-hmm.
I thought about like, if the parent from the beginning is narcissistic and then the enabling parent, let's say it's a man who's narcissistic and the woman who's the enabler, and the child is already born into this crazy dysfunction, right? I could see that, like, because the enabler may not have the ability to really focus on the babies that well, it might affect the bond and the attachment. And I'm almost like
Mm-hmm.
thinking, there becomes this more like a child can be more anxious and more avoidant, but really disorganized, probably where they can do a little of both, right? So
Right,
I
right.
just was thinking about that in terms of like, I want to avoid emotions altogether because when I'm emotional, I watched my
Mm-hmm.
brother getting abused or hurt or yelled at or
Right,
whatever,
right.
and so I'm just going to shut that all down and just be hyper independent. Or what does that, do you think, I mean, that must
Mm-hmm.
factor into
Yeah,
all of this obviously, but when you mentioned
absolutely.
that the bonds and stuff, I thought about that.
Yeah, for sure. I would say
Yeah.
that's 100% spot on.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's just so
It
sad and
can
it's hard, but
have so many impacts. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, please continue.
Okay, I think I'm on number four. Number four is
Hmm.
they praise compliance and discipline resistance. So overall, I think I mentioned this already. Children who grow up with a narcissistic parent learn that love, praise, and acceptance are conditional. So in order to have those things, you have to comply with the narcissist's wishes. They will oftentimes even use money and gifts to manipulate kids. So when a child complies, they're rewarded handsomely, but when they aren't compliant, they may have things like their favorite toy thrown away, or they may be dealt really harsh punishment. Sorry, Kristen. I'm feeling it,
Oh
a
yeah,
throat tickle.
no,
Come on.
yeah, it's okay. You
I'm
had a lot of stuff going this
on the
week.
back end of the flu here, so I'm going to take a drink
Mm,
of my
you're doing
hot
great. You're
tea.
doing great.
Mm.
Yes, please take your time.
Um, so children, I think I mentioned this, that they associate making mistakes with danger because they've seen harsh punishments handed down, rather than when they've made a mistake, rather than it being a learning opportunity. So overall, the family
Mm.
members who are seeing this are just carrying a heavy load of stress and anxiety, trying to keep the peace, trying to be good and not get into trouble, so to speak.
And
So
I know I keep interrupting your, but I just want,
no, it's
as
all
it comes
good.
up, I think, just to further that, I wonder, there's a lot of stress you just said, and I just feel like, and I talk a lot about like the nervous system in my podcast. So I want to say that like, yes, that feeling of fight or flight, I want, people to hear this and associate like, oh, when this is happening to me or this is happening to my children, there's so much stress. They're in this, activation, the fight or flight or the freeze or the fawn, of course, the compliance is like the child is like, oh, what can I do to help you? Please, I'll do anything to make you happy, mommy or
Right.
daddy. And so you do have these trauma reactions that happen as a result of this kind of like environment, home life, right? So just want to
Absolutely.
point that out
Yeah.
so people are aware that, yeah, and when you're raised in this and you're groomed into this kind of role,
Hmm.
it's easy to, like you said, marry that or find that in
Right.
life again and repeat the generational trauma. So it's really important to like notice, like, oh, when I was a kid and this happened, I was always scared, or I always ran into my room, I was always fighting with my parent, I was always shutting down and doing nothing. And I got involved
Hmm.
in drugs and alcohol because I wanted to numb out. I was so freaked out. So, just to touch on sort of some of the things that can happen as a
Yeah,
result of this kind of abuse. So,
for
okay,
sure. No, I
please
appreciate
continue.
you. I appreciate you calling that out. Um, They will also use tactics like gaslighting to distort children's sense of reality. So, again, same playbook as they would use in a relationship, they will gaslight children as well. So, if they're called out on their behavior, typically by the scapegoated child, they will do things like deny, minimize, blame, or claim to not even remember that certain events took place, which are all forms of gaslighting.
Mm-hmm.
Which shake the child's confidence and makes them struggle to gain control of their own thoughts and emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't know.
I'm sorry.
They don't know what reality is, and then they feel confused. They have cognitive dissonance, and um, they feel just um, like they don't know which end is up, like you do in a relationship with that kind of person. It's very, you lose your sense of self-trust. You don't know how to believe in yourself. And so you have a lot of self-doubt. And when you grow up, you don't know how to make a decision sometimes. Like when you're coming out of the relationship, you don't know how to make a decisions anymore. You've lost yourself. It's that same thing when you're being gaslighted and told that you're, making too much of it, or, it's just, you're wrong. Like what you saw in front of your eyes didn't happen. I mean, and children want to believe their parents, right? So they are going to be like, oh, I must be stupid, or I must not know what's going
Right.
on, So I find that to be very, so troubling, and so, like my body jumped into like panic mode when you said it, because it's just like,
Mm,
it's frightening not to, one of the most dangerous things is to lose yourself. And if you're born into an environment and raised in an environment where you constantly have to lose your own identity and your own self, it's terrifying. And then you get into a relationship that way, and it's even more terrifying because you're just this adult who doesn't know how to take care of themselves,
right.
eventually. It's like, I don't know who I am at all. I've lost myself. So yeah, sorry. I just find that one to
Absolutely.
be very
Hits
triggering, but anyway,
home, hits home.
it
Right.
is a,
For sure.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, the next one is that they will adultify them. So narcissists often will place children in roles that they're not ready for, and that's particularly true for the golden child or the enabler within the family if it is a child, by making them function as a confidant, a spouse, partner, friend, or even a caretaker, and that can be particularly true in divorced families. So if it's just the narcissistic parent and the children, oftentimes they'll confide in the other children, or they'll do things that the children just aren't ready for. Um, so that's another tactic. The next one on the complete flip side of that is that they might infantize them. So narcissists want to keep their children close to them, again, to maintain that power and control and to feel superior. So they might treat children younger than they are by encouraging dependency, helplessness, or micromanaging them to just undermine their developing sense of self-confidence. So this could look like, just not teaching them general life skills because that would just foster their growth and independence. They might make them feel like they're unsafe without them. So they might be discouraged to, venture out into the neighborhood and play with friends or be by themselves for a short period of time. All of these things just to kind of keep those children close at hand and to maintain control within the family system. The next one is that they might abandon them in times of need. And this is particularly true of the scapegoated child or the lost child. And it can look like physical abandonment, emotional abandonment, educational neglect, things like that. Again, on the flip side of that, they may bail them out of trouble. And this is true, particularly true for the golden child, because that child is the idealized version of themselves. They're that child again. They want to keep elevated to make themselves look good. So if that golden child gets into trouble, they're most likely to bail them out, so that they can maintain that image of perfect parenting. So
Interesting.
different tactics for the different roles. But those are, I think I touched on all 9. Those are just, again, 9 examples of how that narcissistic parenting style can play out while the kids are in their care.
That's really,
So,
really so convoluted and scary.
yeah, it is. It
So,
is.
so do you have anything more to say on that before we move on? Because I do want to.
I don't think so. I think it's just the reason I put together the examples is just, again, to just bring awareness to it. I think when people hear these examples, there's probably a lot of light bulb moments that will happen where they're like, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I have seen that happening and this is a tactic. And now that I'm aware of it, I can counteract that, and figure out ways to help my kids. So
I want to talk about how to counteract the narcissistic parenting, but I want to first ask you a question about the adultifying part, if I can.
yes.
So, in kind of, maybe we'll touch on this, I'm not sure, but in an example might be like if you are the other parent, not the narcissistic parent, but you're seeing red flags that, the other parent's hurting the children and you're validating their experience. But I feel like, is there like when you're talking to the child about what has happened or what they're going through, and that it's happened to you, or you can see it's happening to them, and you talk about it with them, it's almost like I'm wondering if that's adultifying them too, when you're kind of explaining to, and it depends on their age, I suppose, but when they get to a certain age and you're kind of worried about them repeating patterns and you're trying to prevent it. So you're sort of like, when that parent does this, pay attention to that. You pay attention to how you're feeling in your body when this parent says those things or does those behaviors. But I feel like, is that, is that like bad mouthing the parent and then making the child sort of take on an adult role of like, I don't know, is it giving them more information, or is it, you know what I'm saying? I don't know where the line is sometimes for people. Like, is it too much to tell the child? And you can kind of determine that based on their age, I guess, but still, I mean, it's like you don't want to badmouth that parent either,
Right. I think there's a couple ways that you can work around what you're concerned, kind of the concern that you're raising, which I think is a very valid concern because we don't want to have conversations with our kids that they're not ready for. I think one thing that you can do or try to do is ask more questions than anything. Ask your child how it made them feel. Ask them, do you think that a child should have to clean the house from top to bottom? Like, do you think that that's what a child's role is? and let your
Hmm.
child tell you what they think. Most likely they're going to say, no, I don't, I don't think so. Okay. I would agree. I think the more that you can kind of let them drive the conversation by just asking questions, that can help through those situations. Um, and I had one other one, ask questions, and now I totally lost it.
That's
Um,
okay. It may come
no,
back as we're talking about counteracting too, but
yeah. Gosh, I'm so annoyed because I think it was a good one.
I'm sure it was a
Um,
great one.
no,
I'm
so
sure it'll
just
come back.
asking questions. I think it will. I think my brain is still in Christmas mode over here.
Yeah.
Um,
And also you've been sick, so
yes.
um yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think when you are activated and you're triggered by the fact that your child's being hurt, it can be hard to remember to ask the questions and let them
Mm-hmm.
answer. It's like you kind of more want to be like, "Oh, this shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't happen. She shouldn't do that."
Right.
Um, which many people have been guilty of.
Right.
um, but
Yeah.
it's not to shame anyone. It's just it's a difficult situation, and you're trying to protect your children and also not make them hate the other parent. You don't want them to hate
Right.
the parent. They just
Right. For sure.
don't be abused. Like, I don't know. Again, it depends on the age. You're not going to do this to a 4-year-old or even probably a 10-year-old. I mean, there are things you can start to ask them about, but when they're teenagers or older, it's a little different too. But
Right.
I just didn't know if like even having those kinds of conversation was in a sense either adultifying or infantizing them. I mean, is it because you're trying to like protect them and keep them safe?
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? It might just come across as like, well, she just hates him because he's a narcissist, or he just hates her because she's a narcissist, and she's just trying to make her kids hate him.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
that's a hard one I find because you don't want to. I don't personally wouldn't want to do that, but I
Mm-hmm.
just think it can be very easy to get into that thing, and then that's lumping a lot of shame and stress onto your children
Right.
because then they feel
Absolutely.
like they have to
Yeah.
choose and they're in the middle and I think it's just a
Mm-hmm.
difficult situation. So I was curious about that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
No, I think the other thing that had come into my mind is just trying to find little windows of opportunity to call out certain behaviors as either being like right or wrong that maybe don't even have anything to do with your exact situation, whether it's you're reading a book together or you're watching a movie together. Maybe you see in a movie a child being adultified. You could take that opportunity to say, wow, that seems like a lot for that child to be handling. What do
Hmm.
you think? Like, or you could say, you know, go out and play. That's what kids should do. You don't need to be doing all, I don't know, just finding
Hmm.
certain ways to educate them without using your specific situation can help as well. That way
Hmm.
they're not feeling like, oh, mom's just bad mouthing dad again.
Right. Right.
Tell them what your beliefs are, what your values are. It doesn't always have to be about the other parent.
Okay.
Um,
Right. That
so
makes good sense. Yeah. You can kind
yeah.
of lead by examples and things like that, or
Mm-hmm.
giving them examples and being an example. But
Right, right.
so you have some really good ways here to counteract the narcissistic parenting
Mm-hmm.
style and make your home a safe haven. Can you share some of those with us?
Yeah. So the first suggestion I have is just encourage your child to talk about their feelings, and their thoughts, and their experiences. Remember that, especially if it's the scapegoated child, if you feel like your child is in that role in the family system, they're not getting that in the other house. So they need you to show them empathy. They need you to validate what it is that they're experiencing. I heard a quote a long time ago that empathy is the antithesis. I think that's how you say that word. Empathy is the antithesis of narcissism. So it helps counteract that narcissistic parenting style. Um, Resist the urge to help them make those bad feelings go away and instead just be present, be supportive, listen to them, praise them, do all those things so that they can feel vulnerable and safe to share because they most likely don't feel that way in the other household. And this just helps them build that emotional literacy that they may not be learning in the other household. And obviously, that serves all of us well throughout our lives.
Hmm.
So that's my first suggestion. The second one is just, again, make sure they feel seen and heard. when they want to talk to you, I always tell people, stop what you're doing. Our kids are only with us for a short amount of time. Put down your phone, listen to them. When they enter the room, make a point to light up, to smile at them, to just make them feel seen and heard. Again, they may not be experiencing that in the other household, so they need to feel that when they're with you. The third one is a big one, and that's teaching and modeling personal boundary settings to help them navigate challenging interactions. Um, that's something that I've had to teach to my own children, that I never thought I would have to teach at their ages, but now I realize, wow, that's an important skill for them to have. So, kind of a positive thing that can come out of negative situations is teaching them how to establish boundaries to protect themselves. Um, so that means, again, modeling that yourself. So if you are in a situation where you realize you need to set a boundary, tell your kids about it if it's appropriate. You know, you can say, hey, I was in this situation. I really wanted to say no, but I felt like I had to say yes, but I said no anyways. And I feel so much better because I did. And give them those examples. They need to learn how to do that. So modeling that, and then also once they are old enough, teaching them how they can set their own boundaries and supporting them with that. The fourth one is creating an environment of peace and order. So especially if you're in a divorced household, we all know that it's challenging to have established routines, and there's different expectations in the different households. There's different consequences when there's misbehavior. So it's important when they're with you that you're consistent, that you're clear with what your expectations are of your kids. Because again, they may not be experiencing that in the other household. Things might be chaotic. There could be, you know, these outbursts of rage and things like that, harsh punishment. So it's important that they feel that sense of stability when they're with you. Um, Another one is just helping your kids. This is kind of just a general divorce tip, but just helping your kids understand the parenting plan and the schedule, again, so that they feel some sense of consistency and normalcy in a situation that can feel, you know, chaotic and unpredictable. So something I did when my kids were really little, when I got divorced, they were both under the age of 3. So as they got older, they would ask, when are we going to dad's house? Or when are we coming back to your house? And I would just give them a sleep count. So I would say, okay, it's 3 sleeps and you'll be back here, or, you know, 2 sleeps and you'll be back with dad. Or you can post a calendar, just something that kids can refer to so they don't feel like I have no idea where I'm laying my head down tonight to go to sleep. So
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
another.
it's a great idea.
Um, Another kind of more general divorce family tip is just supporting your children in transitioning from home to home. Um, if they forget something at a house, don't punish them for leaving it there. Have duplicates of things like, you know, clothing, essential items, so that you're not a huge ball of stress and they're not a huge ball of stress if they forget something at the other parent's household.
Mhm.
Um, the next one I think is a really big one for the narcissistic family, kids raised in a narcissistic family system, is encouraging kids to come to you when a mistake is made. Let them know that making mistakes is a part of being human, and it's an opportunity for all of us to learn when we make a mistake. Again, in a narcissistic family system, typically mistakes are heavily punished, especially for the scapegoat child. So children associate making mistakes with fear, with punishment. Um, you know, and they may try to hide things from you because they're afraid of getting yelled at, because that's what happens in the other household. So it's important to emphasize no one's perfect. We all make mistakes. Come to me if you've done something, and the punishment will be much less severe if you're just open and honest with me. Um,
Mhm.
I had a really good friend who I wish I would have done this when my kids were much younger, but she started at an early age. Like as soon as her kids could understand and were talking, she told them, if you come to me when you've made a mistake, you will not get punished. If
Mm.
you hide it or lie, you're going to get punished. So that her
Mhm.
kids tell her, literally tell her everything.
That's cool.
And it's worked really well. It's kind of an extreme, I think, but I don't know. It's just in that sense of encouragement of we're all human. We all make mistakes. It's
Hmm.
okay. So that's a really
Yeah,
big one.
that's a really good one. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got three more. The next one is just apologize when an apology is due. None of us are going to be perfect, especially if we're trying to co-parent with someone who's narcissistic. We have our moments where we are at our wits' end and we might, get frustrated and yell from time to time. We're all human. It's just important when those things come up that you apologize, that you circle back. Again, they probably aren't seeing this in the other household. It's just explode and we're done. There's no repair on the back end. So it's important that you show them that that's possible and that they can
Hmm.
see an adult work through challenges, make those repairs and get the relationship back on track.
I like that. I want to say that the rupturing when you do have something happen and then that repair is so key. Some people will be like, you shouldn't apologize, after you get upset with your kids. It's weak or whatever. You should shame them. And I'm very
Mhm.
much against that anyhow.
Yeah,
But, it's like, if the punishment didn't fit the crime, right? And I blew
right.
my stack and I got extra angry or sent you into
Hmm.
timeout or grounded you for 5 months or
Right.
canceled your whole birthday
Set an
party
F
because you like,
bomb, whatever.
yeah, like you did whatever and
Yeah.
it really wasn't warranted to get that upset. Yeah, like when it's appropriate, like you're saying, when it's due. Um, and I think even repairing the rupture is good in terms of like, even if you do have it, if it is an appropriate response or reaction,
Hmm.
to still have that conversation after and say,
For
here's why I'm
sure.
upset. Here's what happened. And here's the mistake. Here's what happened. Mistakes were made and maybe, you got mad, let's say. Instead, like you
Yep.
said, you wouldn't get mad if they told you, but you did because whatever they did was a huge, not good thing or something. But
Right.
you still want to explain and have the conversation. Like you can explain your anger rather than
Hmm.
react with anger, right? Like I
Right.
am angry because this is what happened. And so I think
Right.
that goes a long way in repairing any of the damage that may be caused.
For
But it's at the
sure.
same time teaching them a lesson, like whatever lesson they need to know
Hmm.
about, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
definitely. And teaching
Hmm.
them that emotions aren't bad. I had this
Hmm.
emotion. It was for this reason. Now I'm
Hmm.
calm. We're okay.
Yeah,
There's so many lessons there
right.
to teach
Cool.
kids through
Hmm.
through conflict and through challenges.
Sure. Yeah, right. I
So
agree. Hmm.
My next one is just emphasizing equal treatment between children and strongly discouraging competition between children. So again, we've learned about the roles in the family system. You've got children who are pitted against each other, who are made to compete simply by the roles that they're playing within the family system. So it's important that when they're with you, you're not picking sides, you're not giving preferential treatment to one child versus another because of their behavior. You're not like heavily involving yourself in their arguments or banter, letting them work through those things. Again, and emphasizing that equal treatment, that we're all equal. It doesn't matter if you're getting straight A's or you're getting some B's and C's on your report card. We all contribute to the family. We're all valued the same way.
Hmm.
So that's another thing to be mindful of. And then the last one is just encouraging independence and self discovery. Again, in some narcissistic family systems, children are made to be more dependent on the parent so that parent feels more powerful. So if you sense that is happening, help your child develop self esteem and self confidence by, again, just emphasizing or acknowledging their strengths, their interests, their achievements, and then also just encourage them to make their own choices and decisions when it's appropriate, as they become, able to be more independent. Encourage them to do things. Encourage them to get out there and get comfortable navigating life. So
Mm,
that's
I like that.
my final one on kind of how to counteract some of those things. Obviously, it's not an exhaustive list, but
Yeah.
again, just based on the tactics, these are some things that you can do and be mindful of when
Hmm.
the kids are with you.
I like it. They're very healthy, and it helps to, it helps to have those guidelines so that you can feel in control and empowered in your parenting.
Right.
Like these are the things I can do over here when I can't really, help what's going on over there, as you were saying earlier,
For
and I
sure.
can't control things out of my control. So here are some things I can do. I really love that personally, like having those checklists of, okay, I can do this, and it makes you feel successful when you can do these things. And you might not be able to do
Right.
all of them, and that's fine. But if you can pick some that make you feel like, I got this parenting thing going, I'm okay, like
Right.
today we're
Right.
good. I feel like that helps you feel, again, more empowered, especially after, divorcing the person and you're trying to do this whole thing on your own as a single parent and a person who works or, lives a life on her own or his own. And you've got these like key, guidelines that really, really help. So thank you for pointing those out. I really appreciate that. That's
Yeah, of
awesome. So this has
course.
been amazing. Do you have anything else you
Good.
want to add as we come to the close of the conversation?
Um, I think one thing you touched on it a little bit at the start, and this wasn't a big focus of our conversation today, but really at the core of, I like to call it, and I call it in my book, being the safe parent. All of this is around everything that I've talked about today is how to be the safe parent when your kids are in your care. But one huge element of being the safe parent is parenting from a place of your own peace and your own healing and coming to the table regulated and ready to go. So that's another part of my book that I talk about, and such an important part of being the safe parent is taking some time to understand how you also have been impacted by narcissistic abuse and start down the path of your own healing journey, because your kids
Mhm.
need you to heal. Your kids need you to be regulated emotionally and in your nervous system. So that's another focus of my book that I talk about, and an important piece that we didn't touch on today, but I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like the self-love journey, the spiritual journey, the self-care journey, the becoming more authentic journey, whatever we want to call it.
Hmm.
A lot of times after these kinds of hard relationships, we do sort of find ourselves on sort of a really deeper spiritual or personal growth journey.
Hmm.
And yeah, like it's an opportunity then to become like the best version of yourself, or at least a better version of yourself, because now you can start focusing on yourself, and you being the priority in your own life can only help your children. And it's not to say you're
For
not
sure.
making them a priority, but when you put your oxygen mask on first in the plane that's going down, you put your
Hmm.
child on second, because what good is it going to do your children if you're not okay? You have to be
Right.
okay, you have to be regulated, you have to be healthy and eating healthy and exercising and focusing on your whatever self-care that you do, and love yourself, and you model that to them, and
Right.
and you're okay with your feelings and you're okay with your flaws, and you mirror then and reflect that to them, and they can only grow from that as well. So I think
Yeah.
it's, I mean, I hate to say this is a great journey to be on in terms of being
Hmm.
in this kind of relationship, but the after effects of it can be actually very healing, and a big growth
For sure.
opportunity for everyone. So, there's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, and the parenting
Yes.
journey itself after is part of the pain and also part of the healing, right? Would you agree with
Hmm.
that? It seems like
Yeah,
that.
for
Especially in your
sure.
book, you touch on that. And I really, such a great
Hmm.
book. Okay, everyone should go run
Thank
out and get this book
you.
right now. It's called, again, Nurturing After Narcissism, Raising Thriving and Resilient Children After Divorcing a Narcissist. And if you
Yes.
want to contact Susie, please feel free to do. You can, please
Yeah.
have her coach
You
you. She's
can.
amazing, as you can tell from everything she's said. She knows a lot
Thank
of
you.
information. She's got her own, stories, and this book she wrote is very helpful. Website is www.susiemillerwendel.com. YouTube channel is Susie Miller Wendel. Her Instagram is at susie.miller.wendel. And Wendell is spelled Wendel, by the way, not two L's at the end. And she has a Facebook support group. Um,
Yeah.
well, it's got like a number on it. I don't know. You don't have do you have a name, or is it just a link?
It's called Rise and Thrive Women, journeying
Mm,
from surviving to thriving after abuse. So it's for
okay.
women who are either in abusive relationships or have gotten out and are on the path of healing. We have some who have, the abusive relationship is far back in the rear view, and they're in there kind of to help and support others. So it's a great group of women. I host it with another trauma recovery coach who specializes in narcissistic abuse, and we have a monthly support group that we run virtually as well. So there's a free resource. We actually have a call tomorrow. So actually this won't air until then, but we do it's the last Saturday of every month. We have a free online Zoom session for anybody who just is looking for support or to vent or find community, whatever it is that they need. So yeah, come and check us
I
out over
love
there.
that. It's a great idea. What a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's probably helpful to have that title again because maybe easier. But yeah, so
Rise and Thrive. Yes.
Rise and Thrive. Okay, it sounds great. And then you have a link to your book, and you can also get it on Amazon, right?
Yes, it's on Amazon. It's really on Amazon exclusively. So if you just search Nurturing After Narcissism on Amazon, you will find it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm hoping to record an audio version of it in 2025. So hopefully I'll have that available.
Nice. That would be great.
So
smart.
But yeah,
it's a great book.
Feel free to reach out. Anyone who is looking for support in this area. I work with women in general who are in abusive relationships, but the co-parenting topic is kind of my personal jam. So happy to chat with anyone who's struggling. Yeah, because it can be such a challenging thing, and I like people to feel, like you said, just feel a sense of gaining control back, getting some power back in their situation. That's important.
Yeah. Well, we need you in this world. So I do appreciate a lot of people are going through these kinds of relationships, breaking up from these kind of relationships. And it's a very tricky time, and it's a very scary time. So to have resources like yourself and people who can kind of help them and pick them up as they're in and walk with them as they're getting out of this situation and into the parallel parenting situation with a narcissist is so helpful. So thank you so much for your work. I really personally appreciate it. And so I'm sure so many other people will too. It's great. We need it. So thank you for being that resource for us. We do appreciate it.
Thank you. And I can't wait to have you on my YouTube show and to hear more about all the amazing work you're doing.
No, thank you. It'll be fun. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. This has been so insightful and very helpful. And I just really appreciate the conversation.
I appreciate
all of your knowledge. It's really good. So
thank you so much.
Thank you again. And thank you, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year to you too. We're getting at 2025 already. Oh my goodness.
I know. It's crazy, isn't it?
It's so crazy.
It is.
But thank you again for being on the show. And thank you to everyone who's listened in today. I hope you guys gained a lot of insightful, good information that will help you in your journey in parenting with your ex-narcissist. And just hope if you have any questions or comments, and you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Susie, and we'd love to help you. So have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll see y'all soon. Take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.